Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome to another episode of the Remaster Podcast, hosted by me, your brother, Abdullah Freeman. And we're here to talk about a very popular topic, the topic everybody loves to talk about marriage, selecting a partner, what that process looks like. And we had to get experts to help us with this. And mashallah, So to introduce our guest, we have Sheikh Suhail Lubna, Sheikh Suhail Mullah, and Sister Lubna Mullah. Assalamu alaikum, guys. How you guys doing?
Doing good, alhamdulillah.
But you know what, Sheikh
you
Suhail?
become one when you get married, by the way.
Yeah, so
it's
it's good.
Matter.
Lubna Suhail, Lubna, mashallah. So just to give you guys a quick background about our two guests, mashallah. Sheikh Suhail Mullah is the director of the Los Angeles branch of Khalil Center, a community spiritual and psychological wellness center. Sheikh Suhail currently serves as resident scholar at Islamic Society of West Valley at Canoga Park, California, and he is the co-founder of Muslim Marriage Rejuvenation Retreat. Ustada Lubna Mullah is a motivational speaker and community educator. She is the director of Tarbiyah and Personal Development at Yaqeen Institute for Islamic Research. Ustada Lubna is also the co-founder of the Muslim Marriage Rejuvenation Retreat. So, guys, it's great we have people who know what they're talking about. What's the ayat? Fas'alu al-dhikri in kuntum la ta'lamun, right? If you don't know, ask those who know. So, I'm not the person to ask. So, alhamdulillah, we got the people to ask. Welcome, guys. It's a very interesting topic. I mean, people always ask about this. You can never, it seems like this topic never goes away. But as long as Allah is creating people, of course, right? Now, of course, we always begin, the popular ayat you see on these wedding like decorations from Surah Naba, right? وَخَلَقَنَاكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا, right? And we created you guys in pairs, right? So just briefly, Sheikh and Ustada Lubna, if you guys can talk about that ayat and what it means,
Ladies
So
first.
Mashallah. The chemistry, you see, it's like, mashallah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. First of all, Brother Abdullah, Allah bless you for your work and thank you for having us on this incredible podcast. Allah created us in pairs. This is the divine scheme, the divine plan. And from the moment that the first man came onto this earth, there was still another piece that needed to be there for him to be complete, right? And that's the pattern by which Allah has put us on this earth, and by which, of course, the species propagate and so on and so forth. And so that's why it's such an innate calling, right? And that's why it's such a hot and heavy topic all the time. Until you get there, you're yearning for something. You're still waiting for something, right? And the Prophet ﷺ, he said it, and he said, "Man tazawwaja faqad istakmala nisfa dini." That when you get married, you complete half of your deen. So that concept of your better half, that's an Islamic concept. That piece of you is still yet to come to fruition, and you're waiting for it, and so those are some thoughts.
Yep. Subhanallah. It's a beautiful. I like the word you use, scheme, Suhail. It's a beautiful arrangement, setup, goal that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set before us. And what's beautiful, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Surah Rum, when he mentions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places love and mercy between us, mawadda wa rahma. So it's not just something we do, and it's like an obligation. You check it off. Okay, I'm done. No, it's actually something enjoyable, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts love and He puts the mercy between. He facilitates those two concepts. They're so powerful. It makes a marriage special, and it negates that concept that there's no romance in Islam, that there's no, marriage is just a business, that it's truly something to yearn for, and it is something that is enjoyable as well.
It kind of reminds me of sports, because they always talk about schemes and plays and doing things together as a group. So you guys really have to have like a team mindset, and it's interesting. But before you get to that point, let's talk about before then. If you guys don't mind me asking, how long have you guys been married?
Let's put
25,
Sohail to the test.
25 years.
Mashallah, 25 years, mashallah. That's a beautiful number, mashallah. So 25 years you guys have been married. So things are a little bit different, let's just say, than when you guys were single and looking for a significant other. So briefly, if we can just discuss, the current landscape for Muslim singles, it's a lot of, I mean, the waters are pretty murky, it's I heard a joke. Somebody said somebody peed in the dating pool,
Oh
so
no.
it's like so it's things are a little bit rough, and I think it's just a global holistic view, you know what I mean? But briefly, if you guys could speak as to like the current if you guys what are some things you guys hear from your rejuvenation camp or from other single people who come to you for advice, just the difficulties they have with getting married.
Yeah, I'll start. The rejuvenation retreat we do is for couples that are already married, but both of us in our chaplaincy capacity, subhanallah, we did speak with many subhanallah students and other
Mhm.
adults that are young adults that are looking to get married, and some of the typical problems I hear. They're looking for somebody who's practicing, and unfortunately, the person that they're looking for is not practicing.
Mhm.
When they do find that special someone, the parent doesn't agree, and that tends to be due to a difference in ethnicity than the family that's being asked. Those are the two biggest that come to mind. So, hell, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see a ton of stuff. I mean, for me, I have a hard time really reconciling that, to be honest with you, because
Mhm.
that wasn't my experience, right? So it's hard to fully it's hard to fully feel what young people feel today because I just don't live it. But I hear so much of it. Young brothers in
Mhm.
particular come and say, "Well, ain't no sisters out there." I say, "Well, what are you talking about, man? They're everywhere." From my perspective, right? So it's hard for me to fully grasp it. But yeah, what Lubna says resonates. I think a lot of what I see has to do with just poor communication with young Muslims who are looking to get married with their parents, and they've just never
Yes.
really kind of, you know, discussed how they're going to move forward in their lives and so forth. So that way, when they do come to this stage, there's just a lot of weirdness, hesitation. What
Mhm.
should we do? I don't know how to do. Do I talk to my parents?
Mhm.
Do I talk to a girl first? Do I talk to my parents first?
Mhm.
I'm not, they're just because there's not good open communication in families, and so that I
Yes.
see that as a primary sort of hurdle that needs to be really overcome before you can get into a good space. The other reality is just I think the world we live in more and more of a virtual world, and community spaces are
Mm.
dwindling, by which
Mhm.
where we just are, going to the masjid as a regular, um, and engaging in-person spaces where we're constantly exposed to other people. I mean, I even notice simply the fact of family gatherings. Like my family, we don't gather the way in which we used to, and I think that's humanity as a whole, right? So just the human connection, because people feel that they have their social fill on various media platforms and such, so therefore the human connection in person is not to the same extent, and then that leaves a lot to be yearned for, right? And especially in the marriage space, right? So I think there's a multitude of factors that play into that.
It was interesting. I was just talking to somebody about that last night. It was in relation more so to youth violence. And it's like, before in societies when people would go out to the grocery stores more, go out and play sports more, you just do things, you would see people. So it's a little less tension because you're like, I see this guy every Sunday at the grocery store. You see this guy like this, or we study at this place. You might know somebody who knows them, but now it's like everybody's just total strangers to the
Yeah.
Yeah.
fullest degree, right? And like it has that issue. But if you guys could just share what was like you guys' experience like during this search when you guys were single and then leading up to when you guys got married.
The truth.
Yeah, we want the real story on Remaster. We do real stories. Only real stories.
I mean, it was love at first sight, man. From her perspective,
Mashallah.
from her
Mashallah.
perspective, for me, it took me some time. I had to get there, but no, but for real, we went the traditional route. Alhamdulillah. I mean, we had, it was just sort of a family hookup. So, my cousin looking out for me,
Shout
who
out to the cousins, man.
yeah, alhamdulillah, and her approached her brother, and it was sort of like that. And then the first time we actually met was super traditional, man. Me and my parents stepped foot into her and her family home, um, and that's the first time we met. Like it was very formal. We had not talked with each other prior to that meeting, and then from there, of course, we got to know each other and all of that freely, in an appropriate sort of way. But so yeah, it was old school.
And I want to say something about the old school methods, subhanAllah, because it's 25 years ago, but still I wasn't expecting to get married that way. I was hoping that was gonna, in my mind, alhamdulillah, I'm so happy the way it worked out. But in my mind, like, oh, I want to meet somebody in school, I want to meet somebody in work. I was working part time, in a corporate world while I was going to college. So somebody at work, somebody at school. So to everybody listening now who's looking, they're gonna be like, oh, these are old folks. It's true. But even
Yeah.
at that time, that was different. And our families, it's a family connection, but our families did not know each other. We're from two different ethnicities. So it's very much very traditional, even for that time.
But that's a good point, love. I never really thought about this until you just said it right now. In my mind, probably the same for me. My eyes would have befell some woman, in work, at school, or whatever, and she rolls her eyes.
So you're going down a wrong path very fast.
Hold up.
Back up. I said
Well, let me
I was
finish.
hoping to meet someone, but I'm so happy it worked out the way it did. And you're like, my eyes would have. I think we need to back up, brother,
Well, let me
real
finish.
fast.
Time out,
Let me
Sheikh. Time out.
So, and then but why? Because I was programmed that way. I'm talking about pop culture. I'm talking about pop culture, music, movies, romance, Hollywood, all of that
Yeah,
stuff.
like you stop the plane that's traveling from Los Angeles to New York and say, we're in love, I love you, will you marry me? Everybody claps. Nobody's upset their flight got canceled or they're going to be there. Like, it's there.
But
It's a pretty good script. I like that.
but I got the most incredible prize in the world, alhamdulillah. And I mean, we followed what we were given, the share we were given in terms of how we met each other, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. But I think it's just worth the reflection, right? What I had in mind, probably
Yes.
years and years ago, decades ago, and how it actually worked out. And I think they're to deprogram the mind from that sort of reality of how this is supposed to work. I think that's important for us to also consider.
Question then, Sheikh, and to Ustada Lubna. When you say the mindset, what is that? Because, that's a big thing. Like our society is really big on. People are hooked on personal development and mindset and getting success. What should that mindset look like, without it being, or at least trying to declutter it from all the Western influences, like the stopping of the plane, or that you have to go in a certain way, you have to speak a certain way, do certain things. What should that mindset look like, Because I feel one thing that a lot of brothers may look for is like actionables to take away, like, okay, what to do? And even sisters too, like how to go about this,
Yeah. I think the key mindset, honestly, it's very simple. We're gonna make this very simple, brother Abdullah.
Mashallah.
It's to have an open mind and know what you are you want before you start looking. And it's going to adjust. But you say, okay, I want somebody practicing, right? I want, somebody I can get along with. Well, what does that mean? Some people, they may know what they're looking for. And then when they meet somebody, they're like, oh, I didn't realize this is a big no-no for me. This is crossing a red line. This is something I don't. So the more that you could, as much as you can, but let's not get into analysis paralysis where you analyze and you set goals and then you spend years and years and you're just constantly making these checklists and making sure, am I ready? Am I ready? When you think you're ready, not that complicated. Am I ready to handle another human being? I'm not perfect right now, but I want to grow with my spouse. I want to continue to work on myself, spiritually, financially, physically, all of these aspects. What am I looking for? And inshallah, I hope all of you out there are looking for somebody who's practicing and then meets all these other requirements, right? That's number one. How is their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Verifying that, of course, is its own process. People, are going to have trust issues. Like, how do I actually know what they say about themselves? But inshallah, that's we could talk about that. But the mindset is be open. Someone's like, no, too short, too tall. No, I don't want somebody. They have to speak this language. I don't, and they just shut the door very early. Or I don't want to meet somebody that way. No, I don't know who that person is. So have an open mind, obviously within reason. I'm not saying, cold call. We met blind, but we trusted the source. My brother, his cousin, they had worked together. It wasn't a super deep connection, but it was several interactions, several different connections. So it worked. And it's a starting point. Just because you meet somebody doesn't mean you're going to get married tomorrow. But that's the other thing. I feel like people kind of overthink the whole, I don't know, if I visit this sister, that means khalas, we're going to get married. Or if I say yes to this brother that we can meet, that means it's done. So I think having an open mindset and being prepared, but not over complicating the whole process.
Lubna, you bring up an important point, right? The priority number one is somebody who's on their deen. There's a lot of misprioritization today. A lot of brothers in particular, this is what I hear from them, they're as if their number one priority is looks. That's just because, and again, in the world of, social media platform interface, I was reading something recently where plastic surgery has skyrocketed during the COVID and post-COVID area because people are so busy just looking at their face, right? And so there's a lot of strange things out there in terms of then what people have in mind. And then they're just work heavy in that space. Put that on the side. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show you the beauty of someone when you start by looking at what Allah wants, where Allah wants you to see that beauty first, which is how they are connected to Allah, how they practice their deed, and so forth, and then let the other ducks fall in their place.
So if I want to piggyback off of that. So, and to clarify what we mean by somebody practicing means they also have good character. A lot of times, like, mashallah, hey, she's Hafid of Quran, or he's Hafid of Quran. I see him in the masjid all the time. Excellent. Great starting point. Do you turn around and you see him yelling at his mom? Or she's like, smacking around her siblings, or what? So you want them to have good character. That's all what we mean by practicing, right? So their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and of course, not all of that can be ascertained right away. And then how do they deal with other people? Are they patient? All those other qualities that are really important as well.
That reminds me of something very interesting a friend of mine has told me when he was in his process of getting married. And I asked him, it was a process. It took a little bit, but mashallah, they're married now. And I asked him, I said, what is it that keeps you, still going with this process? It was some things happening that were a little bit difficult for him, but I'm like, you can go out and find somebody else and look for other people, right? Yeah, I didn't mean it in a bad way. The sister, mashallah, is amazing, but if why put yourself through this? And he said, I thought to myself, how could I be like ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I'm asking for this. I should just be patient. But he said it's something about this person, when you find this person, that every time you talk to them, they remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like,
Wow.
and that was his reason for doing it, you know? And I was like, subhanallah. Okay, I shut up. I'm not going to say anything else. I support you. Keep going, you know? And alhamdulillah khair, like they're married now, mashallah. May Allah bless their union, right?
I
But
mean,
it's just something like, that's a very interesting point looking at that. And also the character of that, you know, the okay, he may be a hafiz, he may be studying, or okay, but if he's just like yells at the waiter at the place you guys are at, or things of that nature, it's not. It reminds me of that hadith about deen being the first thing that you should look for out of the four criterion, right? But how do you rectify that with the others, right? So what if somebody's like, all right, this person they have great character, their deen is good, mashallah, but I'm just not attracted to them.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's an important question, right? I think the Prophet ﷺ, when he puts those 4 criteria,
yeah.
their looks, their deen, their lineage, their wealth, etc. He's talking about metrics by which you evaluate, assess the suitability of somebody else, and whether or not you would want them in your life, right? And so those are criteria to look at. It doesn't mean they're criteria you just scratch and you throw away. No, those are important things to be considered. All of them, right? And for some people, it's certain things over other things. But it's just, did you put everything in this right order, right? Did you put the right amount of weight on their deed, and then subsequently whatever comes after? That's what we're talking about. For somebody to want somebody who is attractive to them, for sure, for
There
sure.
must be acceptance. There must be a level of acceptability. You cannot force yourself to marry somebody, and you just cannot absolutely see yourself in a physical situation with your spouse. That has to be there.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, but I do believe that our intention and keeping that open mind can expand those possibilities, though, at the same time.
So,
and it's
okay, you know, an interesting point you guys brought up that is like the starting point most people should start at, but maybe very few do, at least in our times, right? Is the family, right? Now, we know in the Western society, as we all know, there's been a deterioration of the Western, like the family unit as a whole, whether Muslim, Christian, Jewish, atheist, across the board. It's not like how it used to be maybe even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, right?
SubhanAllah.
So how do we rectify people who have, let's say I just have a bad relationship with my dad. Like I don't like
Mm.
talking to this dude, right? Or my mom, we always argue. Like I feel like she's too controlling. Like, but I want to get married. How do we rectify those situations and still, would you advise somebody who has those type of issues not to pursue marriage? Or how should they go about that?
that's an important question, right? I think it's important that like Lubna said earlier, you have a general set of criteria that you're going out into the world with when you're looking for somebody. Let's see, this person fits the general criteria, but then there's a couple things that, like, okay, ideally, yeah, I would have liked somebody who came from a household where their mother and father are still together, they're not divorced. Or ideally, I would have liked it if they, had XYZ, but they don't. But let's say they fit your general criteria, right? So you move forward, and you keep your eyes open as it relates to that 1 point or 2 points or whatever it is that you're hesitating on, right? And you look at it, you ask about it, you inquire about it, you see what the deeper story is as it relates to that. But it shouldn't necessarily, that doesn't mean an X. No, khalas, I'm done. I can't move forward. If they fit the general criteria, but there's something that's not there, do your due diligence. Don't completely just gloss it over and it doesn't mean nothing, because it did mean something to you in the beginning. But at the same time, don't use it as an excuse to just knock everybody out the box, right? Then what do you have left to pursue, right? So that's how I would look at it.
Yeah. And that's from the perspective of what you were hoping from the other person's family. And now going back to, what about your own family? You have family issues. You said, you're maybe not getting along with your dad, and you want, or your mom, and now you want to bring up the subject of marriage. Going back to that positive mindset, it's never too late uh to guide a relationship, even when it's with your elders, in a way that you would like. It's not easy. But I don't think we should hold off on marriage because we don't have the greatest relationship with our parents. Ideally, I know it doesn't always happen this way, but ideally, if you're thinking about getting married, you don't know anyone just yet, or maybe you do, but you haven't really started this process at all, start talking about it with your parents. Practice the art of being uncomfortable when there's some awkwardness. There's some, what are you talking about getting married? No, I told you 5 years from now. Okay, let's try that again. Well, mom and dad, I was thinking about X, Y, and Z. Like, we got to work through that discomfort, honestly. It can't be like, oh man, I don't want to bring it up to my dad. He's going to say X, Y, and Z. I already know what he's going to say. Or I already know my mom. I mean, that's part of becoming an adult and being ready to face some of those challenges, interpersonal challenges in life. It's going to come up. If it's not with your own parents, it's going to come up with your spouse or your spouse's parents or your spouse's siblings. I mean, it's all about relationships. This whole relationship that you're trying to seek is about learning how to communicate and overcome obstacles. So why not start with your parents? Make lots of dua. Watch your own self in terms of patience, tone. So it's something that I think, even though it may be challenging, it's worth for us to pursue and start just having that conversation with your parents. Hey, I'm thinking about getting married. This is what I was thinking. I love to hear about what you guys were thinking.
Ustad Lubna, you bring up an interesting point, like underlying. What about the fatigue that comes with that and how people can navigate that? People who try to have these conversations either with their parents or just the process of trying to get married, right? These people may try, but things don't necessarily go their way. What advice would you give somebody who's fatigued? Because I'm not knocking my microphone out, but some people, they may say, this marriage thing, just leave me alone. Let me just go to work. Let me do this thing. If it happens, whatever. Like, what would you say to somebody like that to get them out of that mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. And I empathize. It's hard. It is hard wherever the challenge may come from, whether it's from your own family or the one that the person that you're trying to talk to, or their family. It can get frustrating, and especially when there's multiple times. I know sometimes people are getting, about to get kitabbed or about to have their engagement, and then things break. So it can get very mentally exhausting. I would say, you know, obviously, if it's back to back to back, some of these big things that are overwhelming, take a break. But in terms of getting back into the game, think about it like a job or trying to get into the school that you wanted. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prevents us from something, and actually that was a good thing. It was teaching us tarbiyah lessons on how to be patient, on how to accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's qadr, his decree, on just having trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, this didn't come. I really wanted it. There must be a good reason. I don't know what it is, but I trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the same thing with, butting your head against the wall sometimes, in this whole marriage process, from whichever avenue is putting that blockage for you. It's a moment of growth for you. Okay, why is it that I'm having this difficulty? Is there something I need to change about myself? Do I need to kind of check my intentions again? Do I need to, is it just the timing? And I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. So, with wisdom, of course. Maybe I'm going about this process, or maybe I didn't do it the right way the first time. But now this time I'm going to do it a different way. So also evaluating, is there something that I need to change about either myself? I don't mean to say, oh, in a vain way, like maybe I don't look good enough. No, I don't mean like that, but maybe in my behavior, my approach. So it can be a wonderful opportunity for reflection, and also an opportunity to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and understand that those tests are there for a reason.
Yeah, share.
um, No, Lubna, I think you hit most of it. It's you know, marriage is a divine construct, right? And I think that's important to keep as a central sort of grounding factor, right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. From amongst Allah's signs that He created for you and from you spouses, right? That's that's Allah's plan for you and I and everybody. So so it's important we don't cast that aside, right? Because of the fatigue, because of the frustration, because of the failed attempts, because of one, two, three times I met this girl, I met this guy, or and this and that happened. Um, it's important that we still keep everything in its proper framework and not cast out the idea altogether. Yes, you need to take a break. You
Absolutely.
need to slow it down. You need to redirect, self introspect. Those are all important processes to to engage in. But don't pull yourself out the game, right? Don't pull yourself out of the game. And I would say conversely, the other way too. What happens in some families is the family
Mm,
is urgently pushing their kid into the game, and the kid is not ready, right? When I say kid, I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about young adult or whatever age, young early 20s, 30s, whatever phase of life you're in. But your parents are pushing you, pressuring you, and right now I'm not ready. I need to get my finances in order, my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
I need to spend some time with myself, work a few things out. I'm still getting over this other relationship. Don't push me,
mm.
right? And sometimes that happens in families. So from both ends, you gotta do it when you're ready. It doesn't mean that everything needs to be lined up perfectly, and that's what ready means. And don't pull out the game altogether. Don't retire from the game and say, no, no, marriage is not for me. No, the Prophet ﷺ said, "An-nikahu sunnati, faman raghiba an sunnati falaysa minni." That marriage is my way. It's the prophetic way, and whoever turns away from it, then they're not from me. Meaning they're not following my path in full scale. So I think always Islam is always about that balanced way of engaging life in its various ways and phases.
So listen to the person I know who said they were gonna just go to a mountain and be Zahid. You can't do that. The Sheikh just told you can't do that. So please just.
Come
But
back.
that's an interesting point though. You bring up. Oh, it says Ustad Lubna. You're about to say something.
No, no, sorry. I was saying come back if you were heading, if he was heading to, or she was heading to the mountain. Come back, come back.
No, come back, come back. But that's an interesting point you bring up, Sheikh. You do see families pushing their children. It's a story I know of a sister who one day she was leaving her school and she went to a public school, not an Islamic school, and her parents seen her speaking to somebody of the opposite gender. They're just saying bye, classmates. After that, she said her family told her, all right, we want to get you engaged. Like right after that, we want to get you engaged. Like immediately. Now, it was like subhanAllah, to her, it's like, whoa, I'm not even this is just I don't even like the guy I just talked to, let alone the guy you're about to bring. So like let's just slow down, right? But
I
that's
was
one thing you
asking,
hear a
I
lot.
was asking him about my math homework. I was asking him about math homework. You know.
Just so that's one thing you hear, right? They say, all right, just get married. Don't worry, the love will come after. Does love before marriage exist, or is this something that the love comes when you get married? How does that work? Because a lot of the times we'll see because of Western culture. Oh, I seen her. I'm in love. Oh my goodness, I'm in love. Let me do this. Let me do that, etc. Or you see more marriages from like you could say foreign couples, right? Where it's like, do you guys really like each other? But they're married for like 30, 40 years.
So it's very very confusing, but it's very simple too.
You know,
So
um,
go ahead.
no, but so love is something that, first of all, what is love, right? That's his own philosophical question, right? What does love mean, and what is it, and what does it look like, and all these things. Leave that aside. What we're talking about just being attracted to someone, being connected with someone on the most base levels. Can that come from before marriage? Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. The Prophet ﷺ, in regards to how he treated his wives, he treated them equally. But when it came to his heart, he said, "Don't ask me about that which mala amlik. That I don't own it. I don't control it. I can't. And so there's an acknowledgement from the Prophet ﷺ about what the heart goes where it goes, and sometimes it goes where it goes before you get married. And there are examples of the Sahaba who were in love prior to marriage. The hadith of uh, إنما الأعمال بالنيات,
Mm-hmm.
that deeds are based on intentions. There's a story behind that hadith, and the rest of the hadith actually makes a reference to it. إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته لدنيا يصيبها أو امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. Sorry, had to read the whole hadith to recall it. The end of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, the one who makes hijrah for a woman to marry her, then they will get their reward accordingly. That's the hadith is in reference to a man who loved a woman before he was married to her. They were in Mecca, and he wanted to be with her, and she went to Medina because she became Muslim. She wanted to be in the community of the Prophet ﷺ, and he went to Medina chasing after her, right? And so on. And that's one story of many of the Sahaba men who fell in love with women and women who fell in love with men prior to marriage. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you still maintain the proper guidelines and parameters that one should maintain prior to marriage. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Now, it's important that one doesn't, become wrapped up or enraptured beyond what's reasonable to the point where now the whole mind is fixated on this person, and that person don't even know they exist, or there's no pathway to that person or whatever, right? That can become very unhealthy, some sort of infatuation that consumes them and detracts them off their deed and what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to live and so on and so forth. So that's that's love before marriage. Maybe Lubna could speak to love after marriage. So I
Yeah,
don't.
because absolutely, I think it's important to reconcile that because, like what you said, Brother Abdullah, you said some people say, "Oh yeah, there's you don't have to love each other. You just kind of grow into it." That's absolutely true. That love definitely gets nurtured and grows into something very deep after marriage. That's absolutely true. And what Suhal said is absolutely true. You can fall in love. You can become infatuated. That's a normal kind of human it's part of human nature to fall in love. But somebody could have been so formal, that's very possible, that it's like, oh man, if I even just like say anything remotely like, I don't know, that might just kind of open the can of worms. I'm not going to say anything. And it's like, you really do admire the other person. You think they're attractive. You like their qualities. You love everything about them. But you don't kind of release a floodgate until after marriage, even in terms of your own emotions. Some people kind of hold on to that. They don't want to allow themselves because they're afraid that that infatuation, which may lead to kind of being blind to other things that are problematic. Um, that being said, we you can fall in love before, not necessarily, not a must, but the after that
And
gets nourished through appreciation.
Lubna, can I stop you there 1 second? Only
Yeah,
before you. Sorry, so sorry. And you reminded me of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is an important part, right, about marriage. Sorry to cut your flow, Lub. Was the Prophet ﷺ, he says, "Hubbuka lishay yu'mi wa yusim," that your love for something, it blinds you and it makes you, deaf to what's going around. So holding on to that concept in a heavy fashion or form prior to marriage, if you're not able to engage in what love, to its full extent entails, or that time is not coming soon, and you get into that headspace or that heart space, that can be a very unhealthy thing too, right? Even if you're proceeding forth with that person towards marriage, but you start to embrace aspects of that love that you need to be conscious of not embracing until post marriage. You know what I'm saying? And so, why you laugh, girl?
No. What did you say? What did you say? Not embrace. It was good. I connected with what you were saying. I totally connect.
Yeah.
Sounds very impassioned, you know?
Mashallah.
Passionate. Sorry, I cut you off. You
So,
were
Uh,
speaking.
and this is
mhm,
cool too to reconcile this. I think this is really important because I think this is where we get these strange notions that like Muslim marriages, there's no love or there's not,
mhm.
it's not romantic, it's all Hollywood, as if there's Hollywood versus Islam. It bothers me because like we can, subhanallah, the whole concept, I'm gonna kind of do reverse engineering here of, oh, I love you but I'm not in love with you, right? That whole movie thing where it's, and then people kind of split up. But that's silly because why? It's natural, even let's say you had it before marriage or right after you got married, whatever it is, you have that infatuation, you have that in love feeling. You're so excited, we're still excited to see each other as, but there's like this newness to the relationship. That's that in love feeling that is going to subside by the very nature of human nature. But guess what? The love remains, and as opposed to leaving it on auto drive, Tesla, or putting it in the crock pot, set and forget, or Instapot, all these things that are just kind of automated. You have to nurture love. You have to. People think, oh yeah, I got married. Yeah, my husband, he used to buy me things and now he doesn't do it anymore. Yeah, my wife, she used to be so nice. She used to do this for me, or to show that she loves me, and she doesn't do it anymore. And what do you think love is? Love has to be nurtured. It's an action. So you can have the romance, you can have that in love feeling. It's going to transition to something more long lasting, deeper. And the cautionary tale here is, yes, there's romance and there's love in Islam, but it has to be nurtured. In any religion, in any relation, love has to be nurtured through gratitude, through knowing the other person's love language, through connection. It can't just be like everyone's living separate lives and all, but we're still married and we still love each other. Like there's got to be that connection. So, kind of getting ahead of myself a bit. That's maybe part 2 or 3.
That's
But
all good
just
stuff.
trying
All
to
good stuff.
reconcile this in love
Mhm.
and before and after idea.
So, guys, if you're listening, love is not fard. It's mandub. So don't worry. You don't have to immediately have it. But if you do, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's very interesting you guys bring that because I thought about I believe it's a hadith where it talks about gift giving and increasing the love that you have between one another. But is that
Mhm.
in respect of relationships or like friendships?
That's a good question. Yeah, the Prophet ﷺ says, tahaddu tahabbu, right? Give gifts and increase, and that will increase mutual love between you, right?
Mhm.
It's not, it's a general directive, right? It's a general prompt from the Prophet ﷺ, to do with anybody. But
Mhm.
when we read about virtuous character traits, the first place we should place those character traits is at home, is with your loved one, is with your spouse. So, and that relates to anything. If we're talking about sadaqah, like spending money, right? The Prophet ﷺ says, like, there's different places you can spend your money. You can spend your money fi sabilillah. You can spend it giving charity. You can spend it on your family. The best money that you spend is the money that you spend on your family. It's the words of the Prophet ﷺ. And there's so many other concepts when we think about good character traits. it's important that you place those at home first before you place them anywhere else. So when you talk about gift giving, right? Yeah, it's a general thing that the Prophet ﷺ is talking about, but put it at home first. The scholars, they say something nice. They say, "أعظم تقوى تقوى المنازل." The greatest form of taqwa is taqwa that you have at home first, right? It's easy to show a good face, to smile, to be generous, to say a nice word. Oh, jazakallah khairan. Oh, Allah bless you, brother. And like you this righteous dude going around and display. It's easy to do that when you interact with somebody 2-3 minutes a day, but to do it with the person at home that you spend hours and hours on, and that you have to deal with their mess and they have to deal with your mess. That's where the greatest form of taqwa lies. And so when you talk about you brought up one example, but I'm expanding it, right? Carrying yourself in a righteous way, that should be displayed at home first and foremost before anywhere else.
No, that's very interesting. That how much, like in Islam, how much you have to give to your family and at home is very like is very interesting. It shows just the importance of family and giving to that. But to bring it to the next like phase and stage of this conversation, one thing you hear a lot from like people is like, okay, finding like a good halal to haram ratio, right? Now, not saying that necessarily people want to do haram, but let's say you're a guy who you're somebody you're like you're not as, what's the best way to put it? I don't want to say as religious, but let's say you're not as religious, right? For lack of a better term, right?
Mm.
You wouldn't want to be married to somebody who is extreme or more practicing, I guess you would say, right? At least in the fashion, right? So how do you find somebody where it matches up? Because we talked about that before, finding somebody who's religious, but also I guess in a way that is matching of yours, right? Because I've heard a story from a sheikh one time about a sister, right? Who the sister wanted to get divorced from her husband. So he's like, okay, what's wrong? She said he doesn't pray sunnah prayers. And the sheikh was like, whoa, I mean, that's something he can fix now. But, for some people, that's like hey, I don't want somebody who does something like that. Or are people who, with those type of demands, are they extreme? What does that actually look like in itself,
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because,
I would, I would actually, um, so my kids, I have kids at marriageable age, right? And we're starting to have those conversations about marriage. Perhaps they show an interest in that, and we encourage that, right? We want them to be open with us and all these things. Man, I would love for my kids to marry a person that's 10 times whatever. It's not a measurable thing, but what you understand what I'm saying? I'm just
mm-hmm.
10 times more religious than them, whatever that means. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I want them to find somebody better than them that's going to bring them up, that's going to push them forward, that's going to encourage them, motivate them. If that's what the betterness of that person is calling towards, right? Not some sort of self-righteousness that is put off.
Self-righteousness and overly strictness. Let me add that. I think that's
Yeah,
the context I was
right.
looking for. Because
Well
those
said.
people mean people who are just a
Well
certain
said.
extremist viewpoint of how they do things. That's what I was going for.
Yeah, well said. Like a certain, like just narrowness. Yeah, their practice
Narrow.
of in certain functions or fashions maybe is, more, I don't know, proliferant than somebody else in certain work acts of worship or something like that. But my advice to any young person trying to get, or old person trying to get married, or anybody in between, find somebody that's going to lift
Yeah.
you up, that's going to encourage you, somebody that you can study the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with, somebody that you can learn the deen from and with, because they know more than you, because they've been exposed, or whatever the case is, they've studied more, they come from a family where they had certain traditions, whatever it may be. I encourage that. um, and naturally, what's going to happen anyways, when you talk, when you are basically sizing each other up, when you're getting to know each other, all that's going to come out, or ideally it's going to come out, where you're going to kind of, navigate those waters and see who each other is and evaluate each other and your level of practice. And is this the person? Yeah, is that the kind of person I want to be around? This is what they do. And, is that within my scope of who I'm looking to be? All that's going to come out anyway. So I would never worry about, generally speaking, I wouldn't worry about trying to marry somebody who's beyond me. No, I want somebody who's beyond me because they're going to lift me up.
Yes, and I think that's coming from a very. I think the fine line that you want to be careful of, either way, is what you mentioned, Brother Abdullah, is and what you mentioned too. So it's not about, let's say I'm doing a certain practice more, but I'm not imposing that on somebody else. That's where the extreme aspect of the relationship comes, or the personality, or the imposition comes into play. It's not a problem if there's a difference in the level of practice or observing, different forms of worship or whatever it is. But it's that imposition that can become a problem either way. So yeah, okay, I want somebody to lift me up, but if it's being like shoved and I'm being judged and it's like, oh, you didn't do it, you didn't do that right. Show me your foot. Is it wet? Like, did you make wudu? I'm just being, that's kind of like a parent-child thing. But I've heard about those kind of situations between couples, and that can be problematic. So, it's making sure that you do talk about it, Sohel, right? You mentioned, that's going to come out naturally. Hopefully, like, make sure you talk about it. And what are you comfortable with? And this is what is your expectation? Right? I noticed this about you, and this is where I'm at. I would like to grow, but this is where I'm at now. So it's got to be talked about, number one. Number two, are you guys comfortable with each other's kind of where they're at, if that makes sense?
And so then the way, you first brought it up, Brother Abdullah, is that, haram behavior is something different, right? Maybe lack of practice to the same level of somebody else is something else. But, engaging somebody, meaning talking to someone, talking to them for marriage, and they're engaged in haram behaviors. Somebody smoke weed, somebody looks at pornography, or any stuff like that. That you want to stay away from. That's not, that's not like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I'm not the greatest person either. I still have my own work to do. And so who am I to judge them? No, there's certain lines that are not, they don't pray. Yeah, he goes to, I'm spiritual. I'm not religious. Oh yeah.
And they're okay with staying that way.
And being okay with that kind of stuff. That's not good. Right? Those are not relaxations that you should, be willing to compromise for, or laxities that you should bring your level down for.
Right.
Not a,
Get married.
But to have different levels of practice, but you're both striving. That's going to be there. That's going to be there in many, if not most, relationships.
It's interesting to hear like that the setting the boundaries and the borders, right? Because I feel like with some people, after they reach certain points, some people they're just like, whatever, let me just do it, get out the way, it'll be fine. Maybe they do it later. But I was just thinking about that same thing. If somebody tells you that, okay, my plan is to develop Islamically, well, you should ask them, okay, well, what does that plan look like? What are you doing in the meantime before marriage to develop yourself Islamically, right? Because when we stand for hisab, it's not going to be, okay, you guys did this thing. No, it's like, what did you do? They'll bring you for, you know what I mean? You have to attest for what you did, right? So it's interesting to think of, but definitely having those boundaries is definitely important, because it's a lot of behaviors and things that, because you're trying to help somebody or save somebody, it could lead you to some type of destruction, May Allah protect, but, definitely. So, one question I have, and something we can talk about is, okay, you guys got married, what was it, 25 years ago? So that's what, 1990, 99, 98, 99?
98.
Okay. Now, mashallah, you guys got married in 98, right? So the internet was just becoming a thing, right? It was just in its infancy. You guys remember Y2K, and they're, oh, the world's gonna end, blah blah blah, whatever. We're
Mhm.
here, alhamdulillah, right? But you know, now in this era, we have the internet. And, you know, a lot of people, they'll suggest to you, like, oh, you're not married? Get on these Muslim marriage apps. Get on this app. Get on this thing. Get on this thing. You have Facebook. You have Instagram. You have the DMs. You have the cyberspace. Which, in fact, we might make that a whole topic in itself, right? But how should somebody go about, like, let's say you're talking to multiple people. How does somebody go about choosing who they should pursue more if all their interactions are virtual?
Mm. Mhm. Well, I have a thought.
Mm-hmm.
I'm distracted by this paper that fell on the floor. Okay, I have a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that that cyberspace and talking to multiple people for the potential of getting married, right? You know, like I would also caution against that. But what I mean by that is, let me throw out a wide net and see what I can catch, because
Uh-huh.
what's happening on the other end? Somebody may be talking, they may take it very seriously. It's like, okay, I'm going to talk to one person at a time. You know, let's see if it works out. If it doesn't, I'm going to move to the next person. And in the meantime, they're taking a relationship seriously, even though it's in its very preliminary stage. And somebody else is like, oh, I'm talking to 10 different people here and I'm going to get back to you in 4 or 5 days. And so there can be a mismatch and a misunderstanding in where intentions lie. Um, so how do we keep it? How do we just kind of keep it more organized? I mean, people have different thoughts about different Muslim matchmaking. I don't want to call them dating, okay? Muslim matchmaking sites. Some are better than others. People have found success, but take it seriously. Don't use it as a magazine. Flip, no, like, don't like. Right? I mean, it can get to the point where we're really desensitizing ourselves. And you see so many choices. Well, oh no, this one, no, I don't want to move to. I don't want to move to Indiana. Okay, let me go see. No, this guy, he's little. You know,
Oh
we're gonna start
no!
shopping. I'm teasing.
Oh no! Oh no!
Move to Indiana, guys. What Abdullah is looking. Uh, uh, um. So that whole space, we have to be careful. We have to be careful. Meaning, treat it like I was gonna go to a sister's house and go, or you know, and go meet her, or I was gonna go ask so and so about so and so. So that's kind of, I'm jumping into the cautionary, you know, precautions before we even got there. But take it seriously, and know that when, you know, yeah, everything is easy online, but there's somebody on the other end who may be taking it seriously. So we have to go in with good intentions, and not go in with this idea of just, let me just kind of send out a bunch of messages and see what happens.
Agreed. I mean, you know, some of the platforms, and I'm not intricately aware of like the workings of some of the things because I ain't looked around on them. But from what I hear
You
from
better
people,
not know.
yeah, yeah. But from what I hear, I mean, I have a lot of weird stories, man, about just that, exactly what you just kind of indicated towards Lubna. But we're not going to go there. Um, you know, the swipe left, swipe right syndrome stuff. Some of the platforms are fundamentally flawed. And so be very conscious and careful of where you're looking to begin with.
Yes.
Because obviously, a platform that has zero to maybe one or two boundaries that you have to sort of, you know, qualify for to get on, and then for anybody and everybody to see your profile and for you to see anybody and everybody's profile on the other end, that's problematic in and of itself. So be conscious of where you are looking to begin with. Don't just sign up on every single, uh, you know, matchmaking app in the world, because um, there are many people obviously who are predatory on the, and they're not, and they are looking at as dating. They're not looking at as matchmaking for marriage, because yeah, I need to
Unfortunately.
know this person. before I get married, and I need to. And they have a Western mindset in terms of what that looks like. They're not looking at this from the prism of Islam and how Islam talks about engaging people prior to marriage. So be very conscious, where you're looking. Go the old world method, the old school auntie method. It's a good method because there's some filtering that's already taking place, and there are some of the new school platforms that still are
Mhm.
incorporating some of those old school methods,
Yes.
and that's what you want to be conscious of that, in terms of making sure that some of those filters are set up in the apps or websites that you're engaging for matrimonials.
It's interesting you bring that about the filters because it's one of them in particular I'd seen one time. It's a certain requirement you couldn't have. I think like you couldn't put that you wanted sister with hijab on. I think that was like or hijab as one of your criterion, which was interesting to me. I was like, oh, okay, that's you can block the other stuff, but and then one of them has like smoking, but it doesn't have like drugs. It just says smoking. So maybe somebody they say, all right, hey, I don't smoke, but who knows? Wallahu alam. But
Yeah.
because I asked that because
True.
in our culture, at least for our generation of things, the internet is an intrinsic part of our lives, right? And even for you guys now, right? We're doing
Yeah.
this podcast virtually. Mashallah, you guys please subscribe. But it's like everything is like you're always either in the real world for a little bit, then you have to check the cyber world. In the real world a little bit, and you check the cyber world. And we have communities on there. You have friends, you have people you meet, you have people who know other people, and you're like, oh, mashallah, who is that? A sister sees a brother. Oh, who's this guy? Oh, okay. Like, and it's a part of us. So just
Yeah.
navigating this space that's never been there before is just something that I know a lot of people have questions about. Like, oh, should I, if I see a sister and she's attractive, but it's through the internet, do I DM her or do I? Because you can't. I mean, you don't want to DM her and say, "Hey, what's your Baba's number?" And then she's like, "This weirdo, all right, block." Like,
Yeah, yeah,
you don't want to. So it's just a lot of these nuances just to
yeah,
navigate.
yeah.
There's a lot of these nuances.
Yeah, that's a rough
You
space, right? No, go ahead, love. Go ahead.
Thank you. You bring up a good point, and we want to be cognizant of that. We don't want to be like we're talking from caveman years, and we're like, oh, don't do anything on the internet. You're
Mhm,
absolutely right,
mhm,
and in that scenario, absolutely. I mean, that's great that we're connected in these different ways, right? And
mhm,
especially like even in the Muslim American society space, right? The mass
mhm,
space.
mhm.
Alhamdulillah, you may see somebody always virtually, convention maybe one time, but then a billion times
So your
online.
usra or
And
something like that. Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm,
So, to the best of your ability, if somebody is interested in someone else, that's fine to connect, with that person, but still maybe you can soften that because you said it would be odd if you said, "Hey, can I have your dad's number?" You
mhm,
talk, well,
mhm.
you know what? I think so and so. I know so and so lives in that same city. I wonder if they know about her and if they ask, is she looking to get married or is he looking to get married? Still kind of using that
But
methodology
Sister Lubna, let me
kind of breaks that ice. It softens the kind of randomness.
Ustad, let me interject though, because that's one thing I notice about our community that is an issue sometimes, right? Like
Okay,
we
tell me.
aren't as cooperative in those regards sometimes. Sometimes you
Mm,
ask somebody and some people say, yeah, they'll give you like general answers or they're like, this guy, leave me alone. Or like almost like they're not trying to help, And it's like our community doesn't really facilitate this process as much. With some people, not everywhere, but with some.
okay, that's a problem.
Mm,
We need each other. We're
mhm,
communal
mhm,
people. We should be looking out for one another.
mhm,
Um.
But then, brother,
Uh.
but then, Lubna,
mhm.
look. So
Okay.
yeah, that's how people should be, but many people are not. So then, what does homeboy do? What does homegirl do? How do they? How do they proceed? And that's why, and I see a lot of that, right? Young people really confused, like, well, yeah, I'm not really getting any direction from anybody. I want to go about this right. I don't want to be some weirdo DMing people, sisters on the thing. And so but then where do they go? And it does become very tricky to navigate. And I see a lot of that. A lot of young brothers struggle with that. And
And you see a lot of the convert brothers and sisters deal with this issue, right? I had a
yeah,
brother who came to me, and this brother's like in his 30s, mashallah, handsome guy, good job, he's young, but he came to me, he said, bro, I said, what's up? He said, I need to ask you something. I said, okay, what's wrong? He said, I don't know how to talk to Muslim women, like non-Muslim women. I know how to talk to them, but Muslim women, what do I do? I'm like, bro,
Yeah.
like it's not a formula, you just, typically I told him, go to somebody, if there's a sheikh, her sheikh or her community leader, go speak to that person and they'll give you information if you should pursue it or not, or how they can help you with this process. But
Yeah.
it's a lot of people who they may not even have somebody who can give them that type of information, right, in that space. And even for born Muslims, right, like us, like it's not always a clean, easy shifting,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it can be tricky, right, to navigate that space. Absolutely. And I empathize with brothers and sisters that have to kind of go through that. But you gave a couple of leads. As much as you can, as much as you do have access to
Yeah.
people, access those people, right? You're the
Mhm,
mentors in the community imam, uh, one of the older aunties in the community who seems well connected. Um,
mhm,
to go through those means and mediums first is important. You can't just jump those stages,
mhm,
because it's showing a level of maturity, is showing a level of, haya, modesty, right, in terms of how you're moving forward. So that's important. But then when you do find yourself like, well, I don't know where else to go, a convert who doesn't know anybody in the community, and they've been Muslim 5, 10 years maybe, but
mhm,
still they're just their ties are not deep by nature of how they came into the deen and their lives and so on and so forth. So does that mean that it's absolutely inappropriate for them to go step to a sister directly? No, I don't think so. But they have to do that with the full kind of wherewithal and knowledge of the fact that
mhm,
of what this means. So now I'm going to step to the sister, and what does that potentially mean in terms of, you know, if I do this, then what does that mean for my chances with her? There is, it does, you got to evaluate. If you can, definitely consult with whoever, somebody, anybody other than yourself, to at least be better informed before you make those approaches, right? But uh, uh, so you have to use wisdom in the process regardless. And the process is not a linear process. It looks very different depending upon who you are, where you come from, who you have access to in
Yeah.
terms of how that community functions, all of those things. But use the standard traditional means as much as you have access to them before you just go directly and approach people directly. I know, like, I'll give an example. There's a brother in the community. I know actually a few brothers in the community, in various communities, where I engage, and sisters are just weirded out by them because they've approached like 10 different sisters,
mhm,
and now all the sisters know, like, this guy's going to come to you one day. Just know that. And so you get labeled, um,
mhm,
because you just didn't use wisdom in terms of how you set forth, right? So step back, hold up, and then don't blast everybody when you say, well, look at the Muslims. You can't even get married. You can't even, well, because you're not. You gotta approach it right.
mhm,
And so, some people get, what's the word, they just get like bitter because,
mhm,
but then they're just not approaching it right. So, you know and we have to do better as a community, and we have to do better
mhm.
as
Yes.
in terms of providing
Exactly.
the means and
Exactly.
the ways and so on and so forth.
It's interesting. I was just gonna ask that, like, about the process. Is it like this? Is it like this? But it's like this, right? So it's
Yeah.
like it's not a linear process. It's all over the place. Like you go, it's and we don't know a lot of things. A lot of people are just trying and testing. Just kind of like, at least in this current era. But that's why, alhamdulillah, we have people like you in the community, and to help educate people on these type of things, and hopefully people learn from this, inshallah, this podcast. Now, you know the one angle I really wanted to take with this podcast is not taking the traditional route of like everything's perfect, you're going down a process. No, I wanted to murky the waters a little bit because it's more reflective of the reality of what life is like in this space for people during this time period, right? It's not as clean cut and you just do this and you see somebody, oh yeah, talk to this person, this is like that, or my mental health isn't off. Wait, I have anxiety of talking to people. Wait, I have to live with somebody the rest of my life. It's different, right? And one thing I guess the question I want to use to top it off of this portion, this session is like for people who started off the haram way, people who didn't start off doing any of the stuff we said. If we said go right, they went left, right? But they said, you know what? They sit down, they make tawbah, say we feel bad, we want to do this the right way. I've heard before that doing that, if you take the step that way, it's like it's done. Like I remember it was a friend of mine who was telling me in her culture they have a saying that like basically don't start off the relationship or the process of marriage in a haram fashion because it will never work, right? I've even heard other different ulama say, all right, if you do that way, it's done. Is that necessarily the case? Can somebody come back from a haram situationship and they end up doing things the right way and things go as planned? Of course, with Allah, all things are possible. But just in a more, have you guys seen cases like that? I should ask, really.
Could I respond to that, love? Yeah. So that advice, right? You said some cultures maybe they have that sort of notion, and so it's a good notion. It's a good deterrent to put out there, but I don't see it as a definitive. But it's a good deterrent, right? Don't start your relationship out in a haram fashion. But if you did, that doesn't mean that you don't have a pathway then to marriage with that person that you engage with in haram. We don't have any such teaching, and in fact, I would argue that you now, when we talked about love earlier, love can be there in a haram relationship where people are committing zina and they can be in love. Well, now fulfill that love and let it come full circle in halal. And so if anything, we want to put we want to rectify, we want to clean up, we want to make halal people's condition, whatever that may be. Maybe that's their financial condition. Maybe that's their, maybe it's tied to love. Clean it up, make it right. Yes, you can pursue marriage. Maybe there's some other things you need to really talk about and work through before you finally, tie the knot. But there's no reason why two people who started off wrong can't course correct and make things right. There's no reason why that can't happen.
Ustad, you got anything you want to add?
No, I think well said. And just in case anyone gets the wrong idea, like you mentioned, it may not work out because of the consequences or for whatever reason, or Allah does not want it to work out. But I completely echo what Suhail mentioned, that there's no reason in the idea of, let's try to make this right. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, then maybe it was not meant to be.
SubhanAllah. Real quick, I said that was the last one, but the last one I actually want to ask is, a hot phrase that we say now is red flags or green flags. So if you guys each could list so Sheikh Suhail, you list what are maybe 3 to 5 green flags a brother should look for in terms of a sister, and then 3 to 5 red flags he should look for. And then Ustada, can you please give us 3 to 5 green flags a sister should look for, and 3 to 5 red flags maybe she should watch out for?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, they always talk about red flags and green flags. And why you guys think, that's just something we hear a lot, right? Like, okay, beware of this, beware of that. Like, if you guys go on like the Muslim social media space, I mean, you have, I don't know, like maybe, I don't know how many relationship advices from people. I don't know if they're married, they're not married, but people telling you, you got to watch out for this, and this is bad, watch out for that, or this is good, that's good. Or you see certain couples, they portray a certain image, and people see that, and they're like, oh yeah, this is what I want. This is, some of it is realistic, some of it isn't realistic, some of it, we don't know if it's true, some of it might be exclusive. Wallahu alam, it's just up in the air, It's really just up in the air.
Yeah. I guess Lubna, you get a little more time.
Can I get on the soapbox for a second?
Go ahead.
I need to get up on the soapbox now. I'm gonna put my auntie hat on. That you just brought up a really good point before we get into the red flag, green flag. Don't look to like this random advice that you get from people, like you said. You don't even know if they're married, not married. Don't look your example to be that perfectly curated photo or series of photos. You have no idea what's going on in their home of these happy couples. I'm not trying to say don't get married. Don't use the internet. Don't use, Instagram photos as your gold standard. Like, this is what I want my relationship to be like. And if you're married, for crying out loud, don't post all the amazing things that you guys are doing. Stop. Stop that. I'm serious. Like, great. You have an awesome relationship. Alhamdulillah. Protect it. Okay, let's be aware of, just people that are not able to get married, people who just fell out of a relationship, all kinds of people who are hurting, whatever. You're posting. I mean, people are human beings. Like Prophet Muhammad said that there's truth in the concept of hasad, of giving somebody evil eye. I'm going on a soapbox a little bit. So that's kind of one thing if you're married.
No, it's related. It's
Also,
definitely
if
related.
you're not married, don't be looking to like, oh, look, they went on they're having a picnic, this perfectly curated picture of this picnic, dinner on the beach at sunset. Oh my, this spouse, I don't think this guy that's talking to me, I don't think he'll do that. Like, don't look for these perfect images of what you think. You know what a perfect marriage is? Go listen to the first from Sheikh Omar Suleiman on the love of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Khadija radiallahu anha. Like, that's true love. That's like for Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to clear out his house and give everything that was in it to this old woman who visited, just because she used to visit them when Khadija radiallahu anha was alive. That's love. You want to know what true love? So, look to the examples that we have, people in the community that they're real people, not fake stuff on Instagram. Or this weird, advices that you get from people like, oh, if she says this one thing, it's over. If he does this one thing, it's over. That was my soapbox. I'm done. Swell, did you want to start with the green flag, or do you want me to go?
Or Chef, do you have a soapbox moment? It's all yours if you want to step on.
No, I did not preaching for today, man. But green flag, red flag, for the brothers.
I'm gonna write this down.
Find a sister that's on her deen. Find a sister that's on her deen. Your green flag is, salah is important to her. Maybe she ain't perfect. Maybe she struggles with fajr, but she knows it's a priority. We talked about this earlier, right? You also you are who you are, meaning your practice of Islam has its deficiencies and its gaps, and you know that, right? You know where you're at. So don't look for somebody who's perfect on the other end too, when you have your own challenges and so on and so forth. So, but they're striving. You're looking for someone who's striving. You're looking for someone who's motivated and wants to go on their dream, wants to grow in their deen. Not somebody who's complacent and I'm good where I'm at. That's important. As far as what other qualities, right? What are some green flags? Somebody who loves their mother, man, who shows respect to their mother, who shows deference to their mother, who values their relationship with their family overall. Somebody who's tied to their family and who's connected. Because what does that mean? that means that's a priority in their life, and they're going to make that a priority in their life post marriage too. And that's going to be the mother of your children. Um, Look for somebody who's tied to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's, again, somewhere on that continuum of learning. They've, the study of the Quran, whether it's memorization of it or studying it in other forms or fashion, has been a part of their life, or they're actively engaged in that. Again, one of our sheikhs, he says something really nice. Long time ago, one of my teachers, he says something nice. He says, your children, and the advice is to men, have 3 rights over you. He says, number one, that you choose a good mother for them. So these are your unborn children, right? This is to the brothers. For your future unborn children. Number one, you choose a good mother for them. Number two, you give them a good Muslim name. And number three, you teach your kids the Quran, because that encompasses everything else that you need in life, right? So if you have a wife that embodies that and is going to imbibe those other qualities, right, into her kids too, like they want them to have a solid Muslim identity. They are going to be they're going to prioritize, and this is another green flag. Brothers, you want a sister who's educated, yes, but whose eyes are on her future family and um, what type of children she's going to bring, what type of generational uh, 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 um, charge she's going to put into her children, right? How she's going to change the world through her children. And so, yes, you want somebody who's educated, but not somebody who chooses career over family. That's your job as a man. Your job is to sustain the family, take care of them, provide for them, etc. And you want somebody who's going to carry the other load, the other part of the deal. So those are green flag, red. I'm sorry, I'm maybe long-winded about this. Red flags.
No, it's great, Sheikh. This is great info. I'm writing the stuff down. I'm writing it down. I'm gonna share it, inshallah.
Red flags. I don't know, man. Maybe the opposite of some of the things I said. Nothing in particular comes to heavy to my mind in the moment. Maybe something will come later.
So
Yeah.
maybe what about if she doesn't pray? She's concerned with career too much, or materialistic, we
Yeah,
should say rather,
yeah,
right?
sure. So
Things of that
maybe to kind
nature.
of spell those things out a little bit more. Yeah, somebody who's the deen is not a priority. Somebody who says, I don't wear hijab now, and I'm never going to put on hijab because that's just not something I can do. Now, look at notice I didn't say that hijab has to be an absolute must for you, criteria for your wife, that your future wife, and what you're looking for, and nor am I saying that's an end all be all portrait or embodiment of what a Muslim woman should be, right? Somebody who wears the hijab. But my point in saying that, in pointing out the hijab, is that it is a marker. It is a marker of identity, a marker of who I am as a Muslim, and I know this is what I'm supposed to, how I'm supposed to carry myself as a Muslim woman. And so somebody
Mhm.
says, well, yeah, I'm just not going to do that. Well, you're already choosing someone who's defined their own limitations, and those limitations um, are not they're holding themselves back from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires of them, right? So I think that's important. Somebody who doesn't have limitations on themselves, as far as where they want to grow in their Islam. Some people like, yeah, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to be this, I'm not going to be that. Find somebody aspirational, right? Not somebody who's limited themselves in terms of their growth in their deen and beyond, in the dunya even. Um, and again, somebody who's um, somebody who's engaged in this is more so a problem amongst brothers, but it's there to a lesser extent among sisters. But we have an epidemic of brothers
Mm,
smoking marijuana,
mhm,
watching pornography now. Massive problems in the Muslim community, and sisters, I would warn you against those sort of characteristics. But for our sisters that are maybe engaged in their own sort of self-destructive behaviors, um, don't turn a blind eye to habits that have become part of a person's lifestyle, right? Whatever that may look like. Um, I know I've done a lot. I do a lot of premarital counseling for young couples, and in that process, met a lot of people who said, it was very obvious, very blatant that one party or the other had some sort of destructive habit, and the other
mhm,
party, they were just enamored with this person. They were,
Mm,
love didn't allow them to see what a damaging sort of, and it's not always my place to say, as that
mhm,
person in that space, to in a blatant way say, sister, don't touch this guy because he's doing this. Sometimes I don't have the space to say that, and you kind of have to let people make their own decisions and so forth. Sometimes I do have the space, um, but but habits that you know and addictions are big red flags. Negative
yeah.
habits,
mhm,
addictions are big red flags.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to just add a couple points, if that's okay, Brother Abdullah,
mhm,
about career. I echo 100%. I think that's a really important understanding that we have. I think both husband and wife really need to have that family first attitude, that for the man to understand it's my responsibility to bring in the income. If my wife does, so long that it works for our family and we're both okay with it, that's great. But I'm not gonna stay at home and say, okay, wifey, you go work. That's number
mhm,
one. And number two, where talk about this, and what do you guys want for your family? Do you want a stressful situation where you don't see your kids until like 1 or 2 hours willingly? I'm not talking about out of need.
mhm,
I'm talking about like you guys are planning it, like both of us are gonna just be like hyper focused on career. We're gonna see them like 1 or 2 hours a night, and that's it, and then we're fine. So
mhm,
so understanding that yes, it's the husband's role to be the breadwinner, and woman's main responsibility is the tarbiyah of the children, but tarbiyah of the children also does involve the husband too, and the dad. Obviously, that really brings huge success to a well functioning spiritually, the spiritual well being, emotional well being of children is having an involved parents. Yes, it can be that the traditional, husband is working, wife is at home, but for the husband to have that understanding that yes, I'm going to be engaged. It's not like I did my 9 to 5, I'm done. I come home, I have nothing to do with my kids, right? We see some of those situations, or vice versa. That the wife is like, I what did I study all these years for? And kind of
mhm, mhm,
insisting that she picks up her career at a time where it's really going to be so hurtful to the family, right? Again, and we're talking about not out of need. So I just kind of wanted to say something about that. And then also, I really like, Sohala, how you mentioned you really want to see a green flag that your brother has a good relationship with his family, with his mother. And for both men and women to not see that it's unhealthy, where you become a yes man or a yes woman to
mhm,
everything, every demand and will and question and desire of your parents, where it's unhealthy, if that makes sense. We're talking about, you might see some red flags. It's like everything is like, let me go ask my mom. It's like, wait a minute. There's definitely a difference. There's definitely respect and a love, but did it cross the boundary of where it's not healthy? Like, this is just a controlling relationship and this is not healthy. So that's a red flag.
mhm,
Green flag that could become a red flag. So those were just kind of a couple of the comments, but I'm going to go into some of the negative, the red flags that are on the emotional side. You want to look for somebody, brother or sister, who's manipulative. Do they blame you for their feelings? Man, see, you're the one who made me angry. You didn't do this right. Are you, that's something you got to be really. That's a red flag. So somebody who's emotionally manipulative, somebody who's a narcissist. I know people use that term freely and kind of throw it around, but is everything really always about them? Like, you're in pain or you're not feeling well, and they're like, well, what about me? Everything's about them. That's a big red flag.
Mhm.
Run away fast. if you, man or woman, if you find that quality, and it's something you will see as glaring. That's why you also want other people, including your parents, to meet your potential spouse. People will pick up on this. People will pick up on this. And definitely another red flag, so I'll mention, is vices. What are some of those vices? Don't just kind of, inshallah, when we get together, they're going to get over it. They said that they're working on it, but they're really not. So don't take vices lightly. Stay away from that. And I think,
That's the world's most, by the way, that's the world's most frequently repeated statement. Somebody who has some negative personality trait, oh yeah, I'm working on it. What are you doing?
Mm.
What does it mean? I'm
Mhm.
working on it. People,
Mhm.
it's an automatic self defense mechanism that people put up. Yeah, I'm struggling with pornography, but I'm working on it. I'm making steps. What are you doing? I smoke 5 times a week, but I'm working on it. What are you doing?
Mhm.
That statement to me sets me off because it's almost something that is said automatically for many people when they're confronted about their vices. Well, I'm working on it. Don't That doesn't mean anything. Just that statement of somebody saying that. So sorry about that. Like, that was my soapbox right
yeah.
there.
Oh, okay,
Mashallah.
there you go.
Mashallah. Mashallah.
Great.
Mm.
I would also say be aware of wandering eyes. You really hope
Mm.
that brother or sister, they don't have wandering eyes, or they're commenting about, that's pretty bold, but commenting about the opposite gender, in front of you, or they joke about it. Sometimes we've unfortunately sometimes become complacent in our modesty that we're supposed to have all the time. In terms of, shouldn't be joking about certain things, or uh sorry, joking about the opposite gender, or how they look, or how you feel about how they
Wait,
look.
Ustada, let me interject. Question: does that include joking about having multiple wives?
Brother, I am glad that you said that, because I was gonna say it's not
Mhm.
respectful. It's not
Mm.
respectful.
Mm.
Oh, well, if it doesn't work out, I can get number two. There's too many different jokes, to
Uh-huh.
be
Uh-huh.
correct.
Uh-huh.
It's, whether it's pre or it's post, it's not tasteful. It's halal. Alhamdulillah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it as part of the Sharia in the right conditions. And we don't question it, alhamdulillah, meaning we don't say no, that's not part of it. We're not apologetic. Alhamdulillah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his wisdom has made this available to Muslim men.
Mm.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has his wisdom. But to joke about it, to me, is distasteful.
Mm.
To joke about it in weddings, in gatherings, oh, just get another one. It's not,
Mm.
to me, it's not respectful.
It's tremendously dismissive. It's tremendously deflective. And there's a saying that they say that marriage is not about getting what you want, but wanting what you get.
Mm.
Marriage is not about getting what you want. Like, I'm not going to get everything. I'm not going to get a perfect woman. She's not going to be a perfect in every regard. But I have to do my best to love her for who she is, the good and the bad. The Prophet ﷺ, he told us, لا يفرق مؤمن مؤمنة. A believing man, meaning a husband, should not despise his wife. In كره منها خلقا رضي منها آخر. There are certain qualities about her that I'm not going to like, for sure.
Mm.
There's 1,000 different qualities that she carries. A few of those, I'm not going to like them. I'm not going to, I'm going to have my pet peeves and I'm going to have my things. But that's not where I keep my eyes. I keep my eyes on what's good about her. That, and I take that all back to the statement that you said. That sort of, that tasteless sort of, joking about another wife and so on and so forth, is basically it's such a cheap way for men to like um, speak about
Trivialize.
their wives and their negative qualities, rather than to take the prophetic attitude towards their wives about, I don't like those things about her, but there's so much good about her, and that's where I'm going to put my focus. But when she does one thing wrong, well, I'm going to go get another one, or some nonsense
Well,
like that. It's
quick question, Chef. What about in regards to the singles? How we're talking about the singles right now. In regards to that, do you still, and you two as well, Ustad, do you guys still believe it's distasteful, or is it less distasteful? Is it more distasteful?
I think
Are
it's
you,
demeaning.
and do you mean, brother Abdullah? You mean, do you mean like brothers amongst the brothers, or you mean like
Let's
staying
say
in front of
a
it together?
brother and a sister were courting each other. Is a joke that comes up about that. It's something that somebody jokes about. Because you're mentioning the red flags or the flags to look for. So I thought it in regards to like the singles and them, the
Let
joking,
me
the
Got it.
banter.
Got
Mm.
it.
let me
Got it.
put it like this: if there is a dude who wants to marry my daughter, and he comes to my house and he starts joking about, I'm gonna do this or that, or I'm gonna get me another one, or Islam is
Eh,
what's up with that? You think I'm gonna you think I'm gonna move
Yeah.
forward, right? So I mean, it speaks
Mhm.
for itself, right? It's just
Mhm.
distasteful. I
Yeah.
mean,
Mhm. Okay.
it, it Islam legislated, and this is not our subject, so I don't even. Islam legislated for men to be able to marry more than one wife for wisdoms that are much deeper than you know petty jokes, or I'm not happy
That's right.
with her or what she did, and therefore I'm going to talk about. It's much more meaningful than that,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
The weight that a man is supposed to carry in just a singular marriage, a monogamous
Marriage,
marriage, let
period. Yeah.
Mhm.
alone beyond that, is heavy. As the Prophet, as
Absolutely.
Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says, وَأَخَذْنَا مِنْكُمْ مِيثَاقًا غَلِيظًا, and
Yes.
they have taken from you, meaning women have taken from you, O men, this heavy contract. It's a serious responsibility. And so when you cast out that serious responsibility with tasteless jokes, you know what I'm saying? I get it. Sometimes brothers just amongst themselves and, just talking nonsense. Hey, I'm not, I don't want to be some weird self-righteous preacher type either. Like, just
Mhm.
casting all of that other. But when you start doing it with women, that's
Mhm.
different. That's different, and that's
Mhm.
tasteless. I don't do it with other men for the most part either. But I'm just saying, even with if I take it to me, I mean, I've probably done it, so I'm not. I don't want to lie either. Right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah. Yeah. Got you.
I'm being real, but 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 for me, when I start to do
It's
that,
not a
that's
regular
just
thing for you. It's not something inclusive of what you do. No, it makes sense. It makes sense. So, to wrap up, guys, I think you guys see from this episode that the pool for the singles right now it's not the best, you could say the least. However, I mean, alhamdulillah, we're here and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed us here at this time, and through his mercy and his rahmah, or his rahmah is his mercy, but through that we'll be able to navigate these times, and people will be able to fulfill these rights and complete the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and their deen, and get married and have children, and that's one thing that as you get older, you start to think about more and more. Because before it's like it's you, and you're just like, oh yeah, this is my life, and I'm here, I'm young, I'm healthy. But as people close to you may start dying, and you start to get older, you start thinking, man, it would be great if when I passed away, somebody would make dua for me, or somebody would continue, or you teach somebody to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you collect hasanat from that. And you can do this through what? Through your spouse or your children, the progeny you guys have, right? And it's dua for that and things of that nature. And I think one thing that we also take from this is this process doesn't look linear, right? So there's not one way that this process will look, right? It's not you do A, B, C, etc. It's a formula, right? What is it? Y equal mx plus b, right? It's not that. It's more so like you just Tawakkal Allah, you go. You know, everything
Exactly.
set your intention for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his pleasure and just go. You don't know where you'll end up, how it's gonna end up. You know, it's like the story of Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam was just down bad. He needed something. Allah gave him a wife, right? And you see that dua. So I think that's something definitely we should keep in mind. But it's still more to come, inshallah, because this topic is just huge. But you know, we wanna just piecemeal it out. Before we go, it's one thing I love to do. This is probably one of my favorite parts of the show, besides having wonderful guests like you all. All right, let me see. Let me see. Please share either one sunnah, one ayat, or one hadith that people can implement in their daily lives that we can all collect hasanat from. When people watch this episode and they take it, inshallah.
I'll go ahead first. I was sharing this with somebody just yesterday, so it's kind of fresh. There's a brother. He was complaining to not complaining to me. We were talking, and he was telling me I haven't spoken to him in a couple of years. Just called him about something, and how's life? I'm getting divorced. I lost my job. Things are not good. But he was very positive, and and he said, but you know, Sheikh, one of the most difficult, and here I'm gonna be real, fully real. He said the most difficult part about me going through this divorce, it's been 6 months, and haven't had any intimacy with my wife. He's a grown man, has children, a lot of young brothers. You know, that's a push, and to be very honest, physical need that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has instilled inside of us, and that's something that we seek in marriage and so forth. And so I told him, I said, "Alayka bis-sawm, fast, fast. You're not there yet. You're on the road. You're looking. It's tough. You're waiting. You're ready, but you still ain't found nobody. Maybe you're not ready financially, but your nafs is on fire. Whatever. Fast. That's the prophetic advice. He told us, "Oh, young people, ya ma'ashar al-shabab, man istata'a minkum al-ba'a falyatazawwaj." Oh, young people, whoever is able to from amongst you to get married, you're financially, emotionally mature and ready, and so on. Get married, but if you can't, then fast, because it's a protection for you. It's a shield for you. So don't forget that, because a lot of people, what happens prior to them getting married, they pick up bad habits because they pick up these vices. That's why some of the things we talked about earlier are prevalent. And then that causes a problem for them when they get married. So protect yourself before you get married. Keep yourself well. Keep yourself protected. Keep yourself out of mess, out of harm before you get married. Fast. Young brothers, fast. Mondays and Thursdays. You want to get married, you're not able to? Just fast, man. Be a man. And contain your nafs, so that when you come to your wife, your eyes haven't been all over the world. They haven't been all over the screen in nasty places, and you are ready to look at this beautiful woman who's now standing in front of you, and enjoy her to her fullest. I'm not saying that in some kind of weird way. I'm saying that you are now coming into marriage with love, with care, with mercy, with an eye where your eye is focused on her and her alone. And so one of the means by which you achieve that is by keeping yourself straight before you get to her. So young brothers, fast.
My hadith that I think kind of speaks to a lot of the sometimes the obstacles and the weights and the sometimes the up and down and the non-linear process that marriage can be is paraphrasing the hadith of Prophet Muhammad SAW when he said, "Amazing is the affair of the believer," and he said that for all of his affairs are good. All of the affairs of the believer is good. Why? Because if something good happens, then what does the believer do? And Prophet Muhammad specified, said, and this is only the case for the believer. Why? Because when something good happens to him or her, he is grateful and he thanks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if something bad or a calamity befalls him, then he is patient and he what is the second part? Something bad happens, he is patient, and that is also good for him.
Mhm.
And that is also good. So when we're in this process, man, I've tried 10 times and everybody said no, or it didn't end up anywhere. We'll try the 11th and the 12th. As believers, we don't give up. I'm serious. It's like that with looking for a job. It's like that for applying to different schools and getting into a program. And we can get into this really negative headspace of like, well, I tried, or there's nothing out there. There's no good brothers or sisters out there. Ah, man, nowadays everything's all messed up. What are you talking about? You know how many sisters I know that are looking to get married? And so I'm sure you know a lot of brothers that are looking to get married. So we got to have that positive mindset that Prophet Muhammad told us about. It's amazing. Why? Because all of his or her affairs are good, even in times of calamity, subhanAllah.
MashaAllah. Barakallahu feekum. Thank you both for the great advices. Please, brothers and sisters, check out this episode. Please share with others. And please take these advices that you took. Don't just listen to this for entertainment alone, of course, but, take these and actually implement these, actually make this a part of your life to try and develop. That's one thing that we would definitely love from here, us at the Remastered team. Also, please, brothers and sisters, please donate today to Mercy Without Limits. Like I said before, we're not funding a war, but we're helping innocent lives that's still being slaughtered in this reckless, senseless genocide that is happening in Gaza and Palestine. So, may Allah make it easy for the people of Palestine and for the Ummah. Once again, brothers and sisters, this is the Remastered Podcast. I'm your host, Abdullah Freeman. Please check out the Revive packets. Also, please check out Muslim American Society today, MuslimAmericanSociety.org, or is it mass.org? Do both. Just keep looking. You'll see it, inshallah. Like I said before, thank you all for listening. We'll see you guys next time. Assalamu alaikum.